Analysis from around the globe featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. So as most of y'all know, I normally start this episode by talking about what's been going on in my life lately and all that stuff. And I will say I've got some really cool stuff to share about that. I got to spend a very exciting day at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. And then I also got to spend multiple days back at Wildlife World Zoo doing the whole sea lion internship thing again. But I'm not actually going to talk about all of that this week because, frankly, I have a lot to say about it, but I've also got a long headline story and still want to make sure we get to some of the regular zoo news stuff. So I'm going to put that on hold until next week, but I do promise that it is coming. And, I did want to tell you one quick little story, though, because I want to have some fun at the beginning of this one. And y'all, your buddy John was kind of a dum-dum at one point this week. And I wanted to share that story with y'all because, sometimes it's just fun to share a silly story before getting into the real stuff. So I'm going to do that. But before I do, quick reminder that Rossifari Zoo News is a crowdsourced Zoo News program. So if you see anything that you think is Zoo News worthy, go ahead and tag me in it on the socials at Rossifari, on TikTok at Rossifari Pod, email it to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com, or, send up smoke signals or something. And if you do that, then I will say your name at the end of the episode. It's a transactional relationship, but it's a relationship, and that's all that matters. So also don't forget to, follow all those social media things, hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And if you want to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can do so for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. Stickers! Yay! And with that said, let's get to my goofy story. Okay, so as I mentioned, I am spending this week at Wildlife World Zoo, Aquarium, and Safari Park, having a great time working with the sea lion team. And so, one of the days that I was here, we were all sitting out in the stadium after a sea lion presentation. And Krista, who is the head of the team, had some friends that were there, and they were going to get to meet sea lions after the presentation. And so we did all the other stuff, and we closed the gate, and it was just the team and these friends. And we were all sitting around and chatting. And it actually turns out that one of these friends is also the mother of someone who volunteers on the team. So lots of connections. And this is obviously a person who, because of that, feels very comfortable in the space. And so we're all just kind of hanging out. And she looks over and she goes, "Wait, I know everyone here except for you." And points at me. And she's like, "So, who are you?" And y'all, I do a podcast and I speak to audiences. So not gonna lie, pretty good at talking to humans. And on top of that, really good at being charming when I want to be. And all of that failed me in this moment. See, what was going through my mind was, "Oh, hi, I'm John, and I'm here kind of under special circumstances because I host a podcast, and that led to me having relationships with this team that now leads to me coming into town when I am gigging somewhere near the area because I'm a professional drummer. And I come and I work with the sea lions for a couple days, and I've niftily named it a minternship. And it's just really special that Krista and the team let me do this and trust me and all of that. And it's very special. And I'm just really, really a lucky person to get to do that, right? That is what went through my mind. But also what went through my mind was this person absolutely does not care about all of that and is about to go hang out with sea lions. So she really doesn't want to hear you say all of that. But I had already started to speak. And I don't know what happened, but I looked at her and I went, "Oh, I'm a special boy." That's all that came out of my stupid mouth. I'm a special boy. Yup. That's the podcast host that you are listening to right now. You're a special boy. You're professional communicator. But because most of you who listen have gotten to know my personality over the years, you know that I am a huge fan of the rule that you commit to the bit. So once I heard my dumb mouth say, "I'm a special boy," I couldn't walk it back. I just smiled at her and left it at that. And one of the people on the team, I think it was Emily, maybe, I don't know, looked at her and was like, "Oh, yeah, he didn't even say his name. This is John." And I was like, "Yep, I'm John. I'm a special boy." And I just left it at that, y'all. I don't know what's wrong with me. But the whole team was laughing and it was so funny. And that night, we kept joking about it throughout the day. And then that night we all got dinner together and we were laughing about it until like 10 o'clock at night. I loved it so much. And you know, a big part of why, I mean, yeah, it's a funny story, but a big part of why I was able to do that in this setting, as silly as that is that I was just so comfortable because the team, the sea lion team at Wildlife World Zoo is the single most accepting group of humans I have ever spent time with. And they are so good at what they do, but they also care so much about people. And when you're there, you're part of the team and you are trusted and you are loved and you are supported. And it's such a rare thing to find an entire team that is like that. And so I'm pivoting a little bit from the humor of this to say that not just to praise this team that is incredible, but because I know I have a lot of people in the industry that listen to this podcast. And I know that I've heard from a lot of people in this industry that there are a lot of toxic people or teams or maybe even facilities out there. And it can dissuade people from wanting to stay in the industry. It can discourage people from wanting to pursue this passion. And I totally get that. With that said, there are teams, there are people, there are individuals who really are so good that even as, you know, an outsider coming in and just doing a thing for a week, which is nerve-wracking and is not something they ever have to let me do again, I feel so comfortable that I'm able to 100% be myself and be loved and supported as my special boy self. And honestly, that's the true special part of the story. I might be a special boy in some ways, but this team is a special team. And that is absolutely something I needed to share with y'all. So I hope y'all enjoyed that one. And I hope that if you are listening to this and you are a person who feels like you're in the industry and it feels rough right now, just know that there are places where it doesn't have to be, at least from that perspective. There's always going to be compassion fatigue. There's always going to be other challenges. But there are some really amazing places and people and teams out there. And for everyone listening who's in the industry, I hope you find yourself your own little Wildlife World Zoo where you can go and be your own special boy or girl. All right, y'all. So it is time for our headline story, and it's going to be a little bit of a rant. Brace yourselves. But I'm going to try something a little different. Normally, when I do my deep dives or my headline stories or my rants or whatever, I script them out pretty heavily, and then I improvise around them. But I want to try speaking from the heart on this one because it's not as much of a facts and figures thing as most of the stuff I talk about is. And so I am not going to read from a script on this one. I am just going to speak. And I had a rather large, spicy margarita this evening. And we're going to see how this goes. So y'all enjoy that, I hope. But what I want to talk about this week in the headline area here is a recent article that came out in CEO magazine talking about the fact that people are pissed off at Dan Ash, the president and CEO of the AZA, for partnering with, let's just say, I hate using animal rights activists because that just sounds better than what these people are. But let's just say the anti-zoo crowd. Okay, so we're talking about PETA and other groups that Dan Ash has partnered with somewhat and has led the AZA to partner with somewhat. And I have lots of thoughts and feelings about this, and so I want to kind of maybe share a different way of looking at this for those of you who do think that's a problem. So the article talks about the fact that Ash has invited multiple members of these groups to various conferences, including an animal welfare conference that we talked about on this podcast before, where members of those groups were actually invited to speak, and how a lot of members of the AZA are pissed off about that and have very strong feelings about that. And look, I get it. As somebody who is, and I hate this word, but an influencer in the zoological world, I probably deal with more of the anti-zoo crowd in a day than most zookeepers do in a year. Unless they're also very much out there on the socials and having things go viral and all that jazz. And I don't say that to brag. It's merely that I do interact with a lot of these people and, am in a very public-facing place. I mean, I've had videos get hundreds of millions of views. And so you get a lot of attention when that happens. I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I've received death threats for what I do. So yeah, that sucks. And the people who do that kind of thing suck. But one of the biggest concerns that I have seen expressed and that this article mentions about the partnership is that by partnering with these groups, partnering is even such a heavy word, just by inviting them into our space, we are legitimatizing those groups. And I think that's just factually wrong. It's an illogical way of looking at it, in part because these groups are legitimatized, whether or not you agree with them. And spoiler alert, I don't. But whether or not you agree with them, PETA alone has 9 million members, okay? Now let's compare that to the AZA, which has 6,000 members. Now, I fully realize that there are a lot more of the anti-zoo crowd that are going to join PETA than there are the zoo crowd that are going to join the AZA. Honestly, that's not the best comparison, right? I completely accept that. But 9 million to 6,000 does say something about the size of these groups and the fact that there are 9 million members of PETA, which is just one of these groups. Yeah, y'all, they're legitimate. They are a real group. Whether you like them, whether you hate them, whether you think what they do is great or evil, they are a legitimate group. You can't just pretend they don't exist because they do. They are legitimate. They get press. They have lawyers. They go to the government and fight for things. Yeah, they're real, y'all. Can't just pretend they don't exist. And so that's my first point. And the second point is that, look, at the end of the day, the whole reason that I care about accreditation, be it AZA, ZAA, any of the marine mammal accreditation organizations, all of these great things, right? The main reason that I care about that, and that I think most of you care about that, is because at the end of the day, welfare trumps all. And if you've listened to this podcast even just a couple of times, I guarantee you that you have heard stories of welfare evolving, right? One of the things that the AZA says makes it the gold standard of accreditation is that welfare is constantly evolving and that the standards constantly evolve to adapt and accept what we learn about welfare. So things that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we genuinely believed we were doing correctly and we're doing the best that we could for these animals. We have done more research. We found out more things. And now we go, oh, crap, that's not good. And I guarantee you some of the standards from that time ago would not pass muster now. That's why we keep changing them and evolving them, right? And the truth is, there's so much that we don't know or understand about animals. I just shared posts last week from ABC talking about the fact that we barely know anything about binturongs, right? And it was World Binturong Day, and they posted this thing about how little we understand about the species. And there are almost no studies happening in the wild. 98% of the information that we have about binturongs comes from the population in human care. But there's still a ton of stuff that we don't know. And so maybe instead of saying that we're going to have a welfare conference where we're all just going to sit around and talk about what we know is best for the animals that, are taken care of in AZA facilities, maybe it's okay to open up that conference and bring in people from other sides. You don't have to agree with everything they say. It doesn't legitimize what they are saying, but maybe there's a kernel of knowledge in there that you don't have. Maybe they've observed something that we've missed. And at the end of the day, if we're willing to at least hear what they say and then determine for ourselves whether it can improve animal welfare or not, then that's a good thing. I'm always willing to listen to a dissenting voice and at least ask where they're getting their information and all of that stuff, I always like to say that I never became an incredibly technical drummer until I started teaching drum lessons. And then these kids would ask questions that I had just never thought about. And I often knew the answer, but had never verbalized it or thought about it before. And it improved my technique so much. I was learning from kids who barely knew how to drum. And, I was teaching them in between touring. So we really can learn from everyone. And the other thing is, if these groups genuinely believe that we don't care about animal welfare and, zoos aren't doing and aquariums aren't doing enough for these animals, open the doors, let them in, let them see what's going on, right? I mean, why not? Now, we might not be able to convince everyone, but y'all know that transparency is wildly important. And you can't just be transparent to people who like you. Yeah, I love that I provide transparency to, accredited facilities around this country and in Canada and Australia and all over in Europe, whatever. I love that. But we also know that I'm a big fan of zoos in general. And yeah, I've spoken out about things that I see as problematic before, but clearly I'm on the side of the zoos, right? But maybe there are some people who are involved in these groups who don't fully understand the amazing work that's being done week after week. I guarantee you that most members of PETA are not listening to Rossifari and learning the incredible welfare that goes into these animals and the amount of vet care that, one random Indian star tortoise gets when it has problems or whatever. It's astonishing, but if these people aren't around our people, then how will they get to know what those people are doing? Don't forget, I only do this podcast because I was so blown away by the incredible people and their passions and their stories that I met while going to these facilities. So if you stay away from these facilities as a member of any of these groups, then you don't get to have that experience and see the other side of it. By inviting them in, you're literally saying, hey, we're proud of what we do. We stand up for ourselves, and you are welcome to come and see it and dialogue about it. And sure, even talk to us about what you think. If it can help the animals, if one thing, one positive comes from that, then isn't that worth it? And if it doesn't, cool. We still got them in to meet our cool people. And maybe we can change some of their minds, right? Because at the end of the day, life is not a Marvel movie, right? We don't live in a Star War. And I feel like so often now, just in the world in general, that's how we see the world. It's black and white. And, that's just not right in a lot of these cases. A lot of people who are involved in these groups just really love animals and have only heard one side of the story. And that's true of a lot of political disagreements and all kinds of stuff. And you can't reach people if you don't have a relationship with them. If we all just sit in our bubbles, then the divide is just going to stay there. And we're going to be complaining about anti-zoo groups 50 years from now while they're complaining about zoos, even accredited ones. That sucks. Maybe we can make some inroads. And also, relationships foster collaboration, right? And there has been some really cool collaboration between some of these groups and the AZA. The AZA and PETA both went to lobby Congress to help get the Big Cat Safety Act passed. And that's a good thing. And both organizations bragged about the fact that they did it together. And that's awesome. And you may remember from a recent episode that we talked about the fact that the Endangered Species Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act are both now required to be sundowned. And if you didn't hear that episode, that means literally removed from the government entirely. All language of them struck within the next 5 years. Well, that certainly seems like something that the AZA would be opposed to. It also seems like something that PETA would be opposed to. Maybe, just maybe, instead of fighting each other, they can work together to try to save endangered species and marine mammals. Doesn't that sound pretty cool? It sounds pretty cool to me. And also, you have to understand, in my opinion, I say you have to, but I'm just sharing what I think, that, any lessening of tensions is a good thing. Because again, these are not morally bankrupt people. If anything, the vast majority of people that are in anti-zoo groups or just have an anti-zoo sentiment to them really love animals and just don't understand what zoos are doing or don't understand how ridiculously bad nature is right now, the quote wild. And so we're actually all coming from the same place, which is pretty cool because you don't have that with a lot of the other seemingly black and white arguments, right? Like a lot of the political stuff out there. You're not really coming from the same perspective. But here, all 9 million members of PETA and 6,000 members of the AZA, those 9,006,000 people are all coming from the same place, that desire to love and help animals. And that's fantastic, y'all. That's really cool. That means there's common ground. Now, those roots might run very deep under the ground, and then there might be a very tall, very thick wall separating those people at this time. But the roots are there, and so that's a good thing. And on top of that, who knows what these relationships can do, right? Who knows what impact a phone call between the president of the AZA and the president of PETA could have if they have a cordial relationship, if they have somewhat of an understanding. Let's say that there's a zoo where something looks problematic. And, PETA decides they're going to go and protest because to the uninformed eye, and by the way, I don't even mean uninformed in terms of like not understanding animal welfare or anything like that. I just mean someone who doesn't know the full story. Something looks bad, right? So there's an animal at a zoo that is showing stereotypical behaviors, and it looks really problematic, right? And so PETA decides they're going to go and protest. But instead of that, PETA decides to call Dan Ash and say, hey, we see this, and, this is terrible, and this is proof that you guys suck, and screw you guys, blah, 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 we're going to protest. And Dan's able to say, oh, okay, hold on a second, let me call that zoo, let me see what's going on. And he finds out that, it's an animal that's showing stereotypic behaviors because it's a rescue. And it was in a really bad situation. And that while being at the zoo, the stereotypies are still there, but also they're less, and things seem to be improving. And this animal would be dead and had come in malnourished and all the things. I mean, I'm making up a story, so I don't need to go into detail. But the point is that something like that could happen. And the crazy thing is, y'all would never know about it. I don't know about it. I'm hypothesizing here. But the truth is, neither group would really want that to get out there, because there would be some in the PETA-verse, in the activist group world, that would still want to go and protest, right? So AZA wouldn't want that information out there, because you don't want those pics and videos and all that stuff out there and getting blown up, even if there is a valid reason for the animal's behavior. And similarly, PETA wouldn't want it to be known that they decided not to picket at a zoo or whatever, because that's their cause. And some of their 9 million members are going to be like, F you, dude, that sucks. And so, these are just some things I want y'all to think about. And I think a lot of this also really applies to a lot of other things in the world right now. Things are not as black and white as they seem in most cases. Y'all, there are certainly some things that are very black and white. And I do feel like certain beliefs, make you an asshole. Sorry, I do. But I don't think that loving animals in a different way than maybe we do is 100% one of those things. Yeah, the people who take it to an extreme and, give me death threats. They get rid of them. But so I hope this gives you some thought. And I will say, obviously I am a big fan of the AZA, and I do like Dan. He's been on the podcast multiple times. I even thought about asking him to come on and talk about this story, but instead I kind of wanted to share my own thoughts and my own feelings. But it doesn't mean, just like with anything else, doesn't mean I wouldn't be upset if I thought he was doing something wrong. I just don't see this as the problem that some people are making it out to be. And I think a lot of people are missing the positives, because we just hate our enemies right now. And I'm pretty sure that's not the best way to go through life. So with all of that said, this was a rather long rant, but let's get to some quick births, shall we? Zoo Knoxville has announced the birth of 6 critically endangered red wolf pups to Buckeye and Cyrilla. The pair is part of the Safe American Red Wolf program, which is, of course, a collaborative effort to save the most endangered wolf species on the planet. So it seems like mom is doing very well. The pups are growing strong. And because these are red wolves and everything's going well, the zoo staff is giving them even more space than they often would. So congrats to our friends at Zoo Knoxville. Also, congrats to the Dallas Zoo on the birth of Jocko, their new 6-banded armadillo pup who was born to parents Jolene and Chaco. His name is actually the perfect mashup of Jolene and Chaco, so that's how he became named Jocko. I actually thought it was because he's a six-banded armadillo pup, and Jaco Pastorius, possibly the greatest bass player to ever live, occasionally played a six-string bass, but then I realized that no one in the entire world would think that except for me. So Jaco is very pink and very cute and soft right now. Unfortunately, you can't see him because he is behind the scenes, but he will be visible down the road, and the Dallas Zoo will let you know when that is going to be the case. Our friends at the Nashville Zoo have some really big news about a really tiny birth. A male southern poodoo fawn was born to first-time parents Bosa and Paku. And this is the first ever time that a southern poodoo has been born at the Nashville Zoo. And yes, he's already on exhibit. Now, if you don't know, southern poodoos are the smallest deer species in the world and are really flippin' adorable. So I highly recommend that if you're anywhere near Nashville, you get to the zoo and check out this adorable little baby because, y'all, we are talking some serious, serious cuteness. And speaking of cute, adorable babies, the Cincinnati Zoo is celebrating the birth of Asian small clawed otters. Woohoo! So this litter was actually born to Mom Munty a little bit earlier than expected. And because of that, it's an extra critical time for them. But it seems like everything's going really well. And Munty, as well as Dad Flounder and the little ones, are all cuddled up together, and the little ones are making noise, and it seems really promising. So we will keep fingers crossed. There are cameras on them, so the zoo staff is monitoring. But yeah, even though it was an early birth, it looks like it might have been a really, really good one. So congrats to the team at the Cincinnati Zoo. And then that brings us to our deaths for the week. And we have to start off with a particularly sad one. Moshu, the red panda at the Oregon Zoo, has passed away. Moshu was known as Sir Snacks-a-Lot and was just one of those pandas who was not only adorable and personable and made the staff and the guests of his zoo fall in love with him, but y'all, Moshu was a very viral panda with a lot of online fans. He almost made it to his 14th birthday, which is a solid age for a red panda to make it to. But unfortunately, health complications, were making life a little challenging for the guy. And so it was time to say goodbye. Moshu will be remembered by anyone really who has ever been to the Oregon Zoo or, on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. And while it is obviously very, very sad to say goodbye to such an amazing red panda, it's also really amazing to think about the absolute incredible impact that this single panda had on raising awareness for his species. Goodbye, Moshu. The Phoenix Zoo has said goodbye to a 59-year-old female Asian elephant named Indu. Indu was an incredibly gentle, intelligent, and resilient elephant who inspired not only the staff at the zoo, but the guests who visited over the years. At almost 60 years old, she was definitely an older elephant and just had a huge impact on generations of people that loved her. Unfortunately, Indu was undergoing treatment for chronic osteoarthritis and age-related illnesses. And as those challenges became more challenging and as she stopped responding to treatments as well, it became time to say goodbye before her quality of life would drop too far. And so, yeah, it's just really sad that she's gone, but also, just like with Moshu, amazing to think about the absolutely incredible impact that this single animal had for her species. The Chattanooga Zoo has said goodbye to Artemis, one of the male chimpanzees that called the zoo home. Unfortunately, Artemis stopped breathing while under anesthesia during a medical checkup, and the team realized that there was also no heart rate at the same time. The vet team did take action and performed CPR, but unfortunately, Artemis passed away. It turns out from the initial results of the necropsy that the right side of Artemis's heart was enlarged and dilated. These were conditions that had not been present in previous checkups, and there was no way to know that, that would be a problem under anesthesia. There is a full necropsy that is going to be taking place that could very well help to further explain the problems, but we all know that great apes have a lot of heart problems, and that includes, humans, which are also related to chimpanzees and such. So yeah, the Great Ape Heart Project is obviously very important, and losses like this continue to illustrate why. Artemis was a very playful chimp, and he loved playing chase with another one of the male chimps in the troop, Scott, and also really enjoyed teasing kids at the window, which I find absolutely adorable. His presence was larger than life and is truly, truly missed. And then actually, I'm going to pivot a little bit this week, and we're going to do one more slightly longer discussion. It won't be like the first one. And then we'll do animal holidays, and we'll call it. But the thing that I want to talk about, and I've kind of hinted at this before and talked about it a little bit in different ways, but Zoo Boise is going to be opening a brand new red panda habitat. It's called the Virginia R. Bartak Red Panda Passage, and the pandas are already in the habitat, even though at the time of this recording, the exhibit is not open to the public yet. But they, of course, get to acclimate to their new home first. And this habitat is an absolutely beautiful place that really takes the welfare of the red pandas as well as the needs of the keepers and the viewing public into consideration. It is a huge bit of growth for Zoo Boise and is just, this is just one of those things that is great, right? We have a new red panda habitat, and that's awesome. And it's really nice for their red pandas, Jasper and Stevie. And those names may have made some of you a little annoyed if you are a fanda, if you know the full story, because I've talked a couple times without dropping names specifically, I think, about the fact that sometimes zoos rename animals when they get to their facilities, and how much I tend to dislike that, and how much I think it really messes with the fact that we kind of live in a global world now, and there's an internet and stuff, and people can care about animals and follow them from zoo to zoo and all that stuff. And y'all, those are not the original names of those pandas. And in particular, one of those pandas used to be named Clark and lived at the San Diego Zoo. And Clark remains one of the most beloved pandas on the internet of all time. Fandas love Clark. Clark doesn't have a lot of teeth left, so his tongue sticks out a lot, and it's really stinking adorable. And people just love Clark. And there was a big uproar when Clark moved to Boise, and they decided to rename him. And I didn't love it. And there were some of us, and I admit I did this a couple times, who would respond to any post and say, "Oh, hi, Clark. We love you. We love Clark." And it's because we do. I remember going to the San Diego Zoo for the first time and finally seeing Clark in person, because I had been seeing Clark online for years with his little tongue hanging out. And I took a bunch of pictures of Clark, and in most of them, his little tongue was hanging out, and it was just the cutest thing ever. And I still cherish those pictures and those memories of seeing Clark, even though I've been to the San Diego Zoo, a couple dozen times while Clark was there. I will never forget seeing him for the first time. Red panda celebrity, y'all. And a lot of people were really, really annoyed at the name change. Like I said, myself included. But here's the thing. Getting those pandas to the zoo really, really, really required a new habitat. Like the place they had was fine for short term, but to actually bring those pandas into the zoo, it was important to build a new habitat. And new habitats cost money. And naming rights can be very, very lucrative for zoos. And so here's my question to you. And I'm genuinely curious what y'all think, because I see both sides of it, as I often do with things. Is it okay to rename animals if you get to like build them a brand new state-of-the-art habitat and make people fall in love with them and give them an amazing home? Or do you think you should find a way to do it without that? I'm curious what you think. All I know is I am incredibly excited about this new habitat, and it looks pretty great. So maybe, just maybe it was worth it, but maybe there was another way. I don't know. Let me know what you think. But I find this topic to be very fascinating, and I'd really love to hear from y'all about what you think. All right. So, yeah, that's going to wrap up the main Zoo News section. We'll get all of the other Zoo News stories and conservation stuff and everything next week. But I can't leave you without your...
Oh, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal holidays. Hey!
All right, y'all. It is May, which is National Duckling Month, National Lake Cleanup Month, and No Mow May. And then this episode is dropping on the 16th, with is Endangered Species Day, International Sun Bear Day, and National Sea Monkey Day. The 17th is National River Cleanup Day and starts Safe Boating Week. The 18th is Harbor Porpoise Day and starts Bear Awareness Week. And then the 20th is World Bee Day and National Rescue Dog Day. And the 21st is World Tree Kangaroo Day. As you know, I'll be celebrating big time. Oh, did you guys see? We finished the Crunchathon and put out the awards in order to raise awareness before heading into World Tree Kangaroo Day. So if you didn't see, go and check out at Tree Kangaroo Safe on socials, and you can see who won, because let's face it, tree kangaroos are amazing. Oh, sorry, got off on a rant there. And those are your animal holidays for the week. Alrighty, there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is in the books. A little bit of a different one this week, but I hope y'all enjoyed it. And please do reach out and let me know your thoughts on all the things, but yeah, especially on the renaming thing. I'm really curious where my audience sits with this. I think I know, but I'm curious. I would like to take a moment to thank all of my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, also here for stickers, and Kevin Williams. And I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone who submitted stories this week. I know I didn't get to a lot of them, but like I said, we will absolutely get back to those. So with all of that said, I'd like to say thank you very much to Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Dr. Laura Schenk, Maddie Pats, Ken Tryon, Marianne Rossi, Jacob Zinn, Holly Page, Ren Howell, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Dr. Zoe Rossi, Jay Meredith, Rebecca Surian, Lizard Dunlevy, Andrew King, Abby Singer-Miller, Madeline Weaver, Elizabeth Chong, Rowena White, Lynn Vesley-Gross, Sarah Gilsell, Taran Hanton, Crystal Chapman, and Yoshioka, Sam Evans, and Amanda Berg. Thank you all so much. We'll be back on Tuesday with an all-new interview episode, and then on Friday for your next Zoo News episode. And until then, remember, friends, the words Newsy Credits Backwards are Steiderk Yiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
And if you want to support the patrons, nope.